So here is the review for level 10 practice test. I know I need to change these on the practice test, so let's just go right in there. So for each one of these, if you can graph it, you can write the equation. So for number 1, I want you to graph an ellipse with the center at 0, 0. So there's the center. A vertex is at 0, -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a vertex. And a focus is at 0, 3. 1, 2, 3. So from what we know, we also have a focus at 0, -3 and a vertex at 0, 4. So that's everything we know. So that means our A, because A is also along where the focus is, so A is 4. Our C is 3. And we know that A squared equals B squared plus C squared for an ellipse, because A is the largest side. So if we just plug in our numbers, we get 16 equals B squared plus 9, or 7 equals B squared, and B equals root 7. Okay, so to write this equation, we see that this is going to be a tall ellipse, so A is going to be under the Y. So we write x squared over how much we went left and right, which was 7 squared, root 7 squared, plus y squared over our A squared, which is 16, equals 1. Simple as that. So next up, parabola with a focus at -1, -1, 4.5. So -1, 1, 2, 3, 4.5. So that's our focus. And we have a vertex at -1, 3. 1, 2, 3. So if I look at this graph, I can tell that this opens up because my focus is always inside my curve. So this is a parabola that opens up, so that means I have an x squared. So we're going to have an x minus 3 squared, because that's part of our vertex, equals 4a times y minus a -1, so y plus 1. So you might be asking, how do we find our a? Well, we just count. From our vertex to our focus, it's 1.5. So a equals 1.5. So 4 times 1.5 is 6. So x minus 3 squared equals 6 times y plus 1. So now we're 2 for 2. Next up, we want a hyperbola with vertices at -3, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, and then 5, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up 3. And a focus is at 7, 3. So we need to find the center here, and we can say the center is the halfway point between these two. So add these two up and divide by 2. We get 1, 3. So our center is at 1, 3. Our A, if we count from the center to our vertex, is 1, 2, 3, 4. So our A is 4. If we count out from our center to our focus, it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. C is 6. So with a hyperbola, c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So now we just plug in. So 36 equals 16 plus b squared, or b squared is 20. So b is square root of 20, which would help us get our slant asymptotes for our hyperbola. I'm not asking you to graph here, I'm just asking for the equation. So we're going to have our x first, because it's left and right. So x minus 1 squared over our a squared, 16, minus y minus 3 squared over our b squared, which is 20, equals 1. So those are the first 3 questions that I'm asking you to do. Given this information, write the equation. Next up, so we have 4 and 5. We want to identify each of these, and then we're going to graph them. So first off, if I look at this equation, I see that there's a plus sign, so I know this is an ellipse. We're going to have our center at 0, 0, because there's nothing up on top. So now we just go, what's our A? Well, A is, well, let's just go from here. So plot our center. We're going left and right, square root of 16, which is 4. So left and right, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Label. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 the other way. Label. We're going up and down 5, because that's under the Y. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Label. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And label. We also need to find our foci. So a squared equals b squared plus c squared, or 25 minus 16 equals c squared. So c squared equals 9, or c equals 3. That's going to go along our longest side. So it's going to be on our y, 1, 2, 3. Focus, 1, 2, 3. Our focus. And all we have to do is connect the vertices. So that's 4. We have our center. Everything's labeled in here. This is all I want for you guys to be able to do on a test. Same thing with 5. This is a parabola. So we need to find out where the vertex is. So here it's 0, 0. And what our A is. So 4A equals 12. So A equals 3. So we go to the origin and we write our vertex. Now we're going to go 3 to the right, because the 12's connected to the x. 1, 2, 3. We're going to label that. We're going to go 3 the opposite way. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to drop a vertical line as straight as I can draw it. And then our parabola is going to open to the right, because our focus is always inside. And this line is x equals -3, and that's our directrix. So let's move it on to the next side. All right, number 6. So again, we're going to identify and graph the information. So looking at this, I see that there's plus in between, so that's an ellipse with the center at -1, 2. So immediately on my graph, I'm going to go -1, and then up to 1, 2, and I'm going to label that. Now, on my x-axis, I'm going to go left and right 3, so 1, 2, 3, vertex, 1, 2, 3, vertex. On my y, I'm going to go up and down the square root of 8, so a is 3, b is square root of 8, which is almost 3 up. So 1, 2, and a little ways below, 1, 2, and a little bit almost to 3. And for our c, c squared equals 9 minus 8, or c squared equals 1. So c equals 1. So we go left and right 1, 1, and those are our foci. So sorry the scale is a little small, but the last thing that we have to do is connect our V's. And there's our ellipse. Next up, 7. So this one we're going to have to do a little bit more work for. And I can see that this is also an ellipse. I know that's an ellipse because between the x squared and the y squared, it's positive. So I'm going to do this in a slightly different color. I'm going to group the x's together. So that's 25x squared plus 200x, and then we have plus 16y squared minus 600y, 160y, equals -400. Next up, I factor out a 25 here, so 25 x squared. 200 divided by 25 is 8. And then we're going to complete the square, so half of 8 is 4. Squared is 16. So we're going to add 25 times 16 to the other side. And 25 times 16, taking out my calculator, is 400. Hey, that works out. So that's plus 400. Same thing here. I'm going to factor out the 16, y squared. If I take a 16 out of 160, that's minus 10y. So half of 10 is 5. Squared is 25. So I'm going to add another 400. So that is, if I add those up, that's negative 400 plus 400 plus 400. So now divide everything through by 400. I'm going to write this below. We have x plus 4 squared over 16 plus y minus 5 squared over 25 equals 1. That's my equation for my ellipse. So now I can graph it. My center is at negative 4, 5. So we're going to go from the origin. 1, 2, 3, 4, then up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's my center. I'm going to go from my center, left and right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Vertex. 1, 2, 3, 4. Vertex. I'm going to go up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to connect my V's. And then the last thing, I'm going to find my c squared. So 25 minus 16 equals c squared. Or 9 equals c squared, or c equals 3. So I go up 3, and then down 3. And that gives me my two foci. All right. We're going to do the same thing for 8 and 9. If I look at 8, I see that this is a hyperbola. How do I know that's a hyperbola? We have a subtraction between the two. So I'm going to, again, I have to do a little work. So I'm going to group the y's together. And then I'm going to group the x's together. And I'm going to add 64 to the other side. All right, complete the square. Y squared minus 4y, half of 4y squared. Now I'm going to have to factor out a negative 4, which is going to change the sign here, which is minus 8. Half of that and squared is 16. So I have on this side 64 plus 4 minus 64, because negative 4 times 16 is negative 64. So that leaves me with 4. So again, I'm going to write it below. Divide everything through by 4. I have y minus 2 squared over 4 minus x minus 4 squared over 1 equals 1. So now my center is at 4, 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, down, up 2. So my center is here. Let's do this in black so you can read it. My A, how much I go up and down, is 2. So I go up 2, 1, 2, label. Down 2, label. Now I go left and right 1 to get my rectangle. And then I'm going to draw in my slant asymptotes. And if I did this right, I have my hyperbola that looks like this. One last thing that I have to do is I have to find the foci. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So add these two together, take the square root. So 5 equals c squared, or root 5 equals c, which is just over 2, which means, let's make sure this goes down here. My foci would be somewhere along here, somewhere along here. Now, because my graph didn't touch completely, it looks a little different. Last one. So looking at 9, I see that this is a parabola because I only have one thing squared. So with a parabola, I'm going to keep the x's on the same side, x squared minus 4x, move the y's to the other side. So negative 4y minus 16. Complete the square, half of the 4 squared, do the same. So this gives me x minus 2 squared equals negative 4y minus 12. The last step is factor out the negative 4. So I have x minus 2 squared equals negative 4, y minus 3. So my vertex is at 2, 3. And my a is negative 1. So I go 1, 2, up 3. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to label that. That's my vertex. I'm going to go down 1. That's my foci. I'm going to go up 1. That line, y equals 4. Oops. You know what? Mr. Swenson made a mistake. That should be plus 3, which means this is minus 3. So all of this gets shifted down. So my vertex should be at 2, negative 3. 1, 2, 3. My focus should be here, and my directrix, so ignore that, is y equals negative 2. That looks a lot better. And then my parabola opens down. Make sure that whenever you factor out a negative, don't be like me. Whenever you factor out a negative, make sure you change the sign. So last up are story problems, and then we're done with the practice test. So if you made it this far into the practice test, I will tell you, of the 3 story problems, they will look exactly like the practice test. They will not be a story problem that involves hyperbolas. So with that being said, let's try to do each one of these. So a bridge is built in the shape of a parabolic arc. The bridge spans 60 feet and has a maximum height of 20 feet. So the maximum height is 20 feet, and it spans 60, so if I set the center at the origin, it's going to be left and right 30. And we'll have our parabolic arc something like this. And then our bridge would really be sitting on top of here. But all we care about is the parabola that's holding it up. So we want to know, find the height of the arch 10 feet from the center. So I know that this is an x squared graph with the vertex at 0, 20. So this is x squared equals 4a times y minus 20. Now, to find out what a is, I'm going to plug in 30, 0. So 34x, 4a, 0 minus 20. So this gives me 900 equals 4a times negative 20, or negative 80. So a is, let's do that on the calculator, 900 divided by negative 80, negative 45 over 4. So my equation is going to be x squared equals negative 45 y minus 20. Now, find the height when the distance is 20 feet from the center. So plug in 10 for x. So I have 10 squared equals negative 45 y minus 20. So I have 100 equals negative 45 y minus 20. Divide by negative 45. So 100 divided by negative 45 is negative 2.2 repeated equals y minus 20. So add 20, y equals about 17.8 feet if we round. So that's not that bad. Next up, a bridge similar is built as a ellipse. Mine's not necessarily to scale. Same thing, maximum height of 20 and bridge spans 60 feet. So on either side, it's 30. And let's just say our center, again, is at the origin. So this would be x squared over plus y squared over equals 1. Well, how much we go up is 20. So 20 squared would go underneath here. And how much we go over is 30 squared. So my equation is going to be x squared over 900 plus y squared over 400 equals 1. No a's to find, no anything. That's our equation. So now find the height of the arch at distances of 5 and 10 feet. So if the distance is 5, you get 5 squared over 900 equals plus y squared over 400 equals 1. So we get y squared over 400 equals 1 minus 25 over 900. So 1 minus 25 divided by 900 times 400. And if we do that, we get 388.89 feet. Interesting. So, obviously, there's something wrong there. All right, so sorry about that. So when we multiplied this by 400, we're left with y squared equals 3,500 over 9. And then we're going to take the square root, which then that makes sense. So the square root of that answer is 19.72 feet. If our height was 10, if our width was 10, so just like the one above, plus y squared over 400 equals 1. So we would have y squared over 400 equals 8/9. So y squared equals 8 times 400. So that would be 3,200 over 9. Then we take the square root. So if we did that, that's approximately 18.86 feet. So both of these are pretty straightforward approaches. Last up, a racetrack is in the shape of an ellipse. So we have our ellipse racetrack centered at the origin because it makes it easier. 80 feet long, so this would be 40, this would be 40. 40 feet wide, 80 feet, you can choose whichever one you want. So this would be 20, this would be 20. So A is 40, B is 20. We have x squared over 40 squared plus y squared over 20 squared equals 1. What is the width 10 feet from the vertex? So 10 feet from the vertex would be at 30 feet either way. So when x is 30, what's y? So we have 30 squared over 40 squared plus y squared over 20 squared equals 1. So when we do this, we have 900 over 1600 plus y squared over 400 equals 1. So 1 minus 900, 1600 is 400 equals 7 over 16. So multiply by 100, we get y squared equals 175. Take the square root. Y equals 13.22 feet. And that's what we want. Our y value is going to be 13.22 feet. So hopefully all of this is going to be helpful for you guys studying for your test, which is on Tuesday. All right, have a great weekend.